Insomma.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the second day of the Macsur Mid Term Conference. After a very fruitful and intensive first day with a wonderful social dinner, we are now moving to the second phase, now the second day of our conference, where we will, after a first plenary, will split up in different groups, as I described it yesterday in my welcome address, talking about the work that needs to be done in the three themes. Before running around, running away into splitting up into three groups, we have a plenary. And for this plenary, it's my honor, and I'm very happy that yesterday it was Lina, and now it's Niels. So we have the full set here of the JPI governing board with us. Niels arrived yesterday from Paris, and Niels Göttge is since October last year. He is the head or the chair of the JPI governing board, and he will, or we asked him to give us some feedback on our work we did so far, and also some insights of the expected work we are doing and the expected things we will do in Macsur for year 2.5 and 3, so for the first phase of Macsur, and also a little bit the expectation looking from the governing board in terms of a follow-up, a new phase, a new project, which we could call Macsur 2. So at this moment, thank you very much for coming. We have a tight schedule for today, and if you have questions, if you have more questions, then we have time for this plenary. Niels will be here necessarily until Friday morning. And he will stay for almost the full conference. So if you have questions, just talk to him also during the excursion or over lunchtime and other occasions where you see him. So grab him and talk to him, describe him our ambitions, our work, and I think it's wonderful to have him here. So welcome, Niels, and thank you for coming. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Martin. Take this. Thank you very much for just inviting me here. I've been looking forward to this. I got the invitation a long time ago, I think half a year ago, that nearly that you invited me here. Before starting, I'll also give my thanks to the Italian host for this splendid evening that we had yesterday. It was perfect, I think, especially for such a network. Not be underlined too much that it is about working together, about people. So therefore, I think you have really done a very good work yesterday. So that was something quite special. Yes, as Martin has just told you, I'm newly elected chair of the ARCHE governing board. And what I would like to do here today is to say a little bit about what ARCHE is, how we were developed, and then also a little bit about how I look into Macsur and in the future. And as Martin said, I'll not just leave you after this presentation. I'll be here during the whole rest of the day, so you'll be able to discuss with me, and I'm also willing to answer questions. So I hope that you will have a good conference in the coming days. First of all, I think it's a very ambitious project that we are dealing with here. It's a very complex project. I don't think I've ever seen such a big number of participants, those coming to the number of research groups, institutions, and also the number of people, countries. So I think it's a very, very ambitious project. And I'll come back to that, also the background, why we choose this Macsur as our first real activity within ARCHE. First of all, yes, I'm the chair of the governing board, also part of the European member of the bioeconomy panel and in some areas. So I've been working on the EU level for quite a number of years, and in my daily life I'm head of division in the Danish Ministry of Research. Yesterday we got a new organization, so we have to see how that will be dealt with. We have created a so-called innovation fund in Denmark, and most of our activities will be moved into that. That will start functioning from now, but really from next year. And that means that in Denmark we will in the future perhaps have another priority. We will have to see how we can involve industry a little bit more than we have used to do, but that's another story. Okay. First, a little bit about the joint program, because I think it's important that you know in which context that you are belonging, and joint programming is a concept which was developed some years ago, in 2008. And the idea was really to see how you could establish the European research area in another way than the Commission had done in the past. And the idea is, as I've stated here, is to pool national resources to create critical mass, align national programs, reduce overlaps, fill gaps, and list relevant priorities within the European Union. Many of these things have been set forward before, but the idea was also that the joint programming should be much bigger. It should be a long-term initiative. It should not be something which was only governed by the Commission or by the number of years you had in the framework program. So it should also be something which should be on a long-term basis. So I think that's very important also when looking to joint programming initiatives. The first programming initiative was made in the area of health. It was about Alzheimer, and that was the one that was created in 2008 as a pilot at that time, and I think it was during the French presidency. The idea with FACE was coming up at a very early time, because many member states saw that it was a good thing to have agriculture also among the joint programming initiatives. So therefore, FACE was among the first joint programming initiatives which were launched in 2010. And the idea was that Europe, as a global leader in many respects, also should take a lead here and try to unite the initiatives that were started around in Europe, both at a European basis but also at a national basis. And at that time, we got a very good commitment already. More than 20 countries committed themselves to build this JPI. And at the very start, we also decided that looking into what we were doing in March, we had to have a close link also to international initiatives. So I think that was very important from the very beginning, that in this area we could see that Europe was not alone. We had to compete or to cooperate with the countries outside Europe. I'm not going into our research goals, but as we see here, food security, agriculture, climate change, that's the basis of FACE. And what we did at that time was that we asked our so-called scientific advisory board to give us ideas how to deal with these major issues. And in my next slide, I have the governance structure of FACE. We have the governing board, which I'm chairing now, and then we have also the scientific advisory board, which gives us scientific advice, and then we have the stakeholder advisory board, which gives us the stakeholder advice. And I think we have had a very good start with our scientific advisory board. They have been very active from the very beginning. They helped us in making our research strategy at a very in the very beginning of the start of FACE, and in that way it also assisted us in taking us the first initiatives, including this Macsur initiative. So that was the start, and the stakeholder advisory board was created a bit afterwards. But the idea was here also that we need to have a good contact with all the relevant stakeholders, farmers, industries, NGOs, when we are going to develop this area about agriculture, climate change, and food security. Then perhaps a small comment, that was that the idea of a joint program is that it should be self-sufficient. So therefore, it was not expected that there should be any support from the Commission. But because of the good start that we had, the Commission has been involved from the very beginning, and they also saw at some states that the way that they could support such a JPI could be with the use of the CSA mechanism, and then we had some money for running the secretariat and paying for the travel costs for the scientific advice report. So that was the support that we got from the Commission. The structure that we have here is that we started with a common vision. I think that was very important for all the JPIs at that time, when the Council and the decision makers in Europe had to decide which should be the elected joint program initiatives. And I think it was an important process, because not all were able to come up with good visions, well-argued visions. There we succeeded, and it was on the basis of this vision that we asked the scientific advisory board to come up with the first scientific research agenda. That was later on changed or converted into the strategic research agenda, and that was after we had the stakeholder advisory board on board and discussed also priorities with them. So therefore, we started with a scientific research agenda, and then we changed it to the strategic research agenda. But what is important now, that was that we last year also came up with an implementation of this strategic research agenda. So now we have also a plan how to work together for the coming years. What was important with FATCH, I think from the very beginning, was that we decided that we should not do everything on our own. If there were initiatives, projects around which we could link to, which had the same agenda, the same ideas that we were working with, instead of starting something new, we tried to connect to them and see how we could also include them in our agenda. So one of the first tasks that we did was that we took contacts with all the relevant areas. I think we have more than 20 areas relevant for FATCH within the more general bioeconomy concept. So therefore, what we did was that we took contact with these areas to see how to cooperate with them, how to align agendas and work together. I think that was a very important initiative. Then we also had to see what was going on in Europe, because we knew that a lot of initiatives were made, but we did not have an overview. So therefore, we also started mapping the activities in the different areas that we were covering within our research agenda. I think also that was a very good initiative to have ideas how to go ahead for the future. And then, of course, we had to have close connection with the policymakers, ministries, research councils, but also with our stakeholders, which were so important in this area, because we are dealing with agriculture policy, we are dealing with climate policy, we are dealing with environmental policy, and we are dealing with issues which are so political, and we have so many different interests around in Europe. What we did was that we, of course, we have to come back to that. We had to start, and Macsur was our first activity. But we also decided to start negotiations and cooperation with other initiatives, the Global Research Alliance, United States, the Belmont Forum. We decided to also start working with our own areas. Climate smart agriculture, the Internet Plus, which had a deadline yesterday, was the first Internet that we are now developing into the new co-fund system. So therefore, we are also preparing a new Internet for budget. So that's the way that we are working. These are the 5 core themes. I'm not going into them because I think they are familiar to you. Macsur is in the first core theme, but the idea is that we are dealing with all these 5 core themes, and our recommendation how to start have been very much based on what we have got input from our scientific advisory board. I think I will also go very fast through this. It's about the same as I said before. What we have done here, is that I've tried to list also how we have how we can see these different initiatives corresponding to our core themes within the strategic research agenda. Now, why a knowledge hub, and why Macsur, and what do we expect from Macsur? First, it was not an easy task to see how to start our initiatives, and some of the JPIs still have not succeeded in making the first initiatives. So I think we made a very wise decision that we took the decision to have a quick start. But where specifically to begin and how to do it, that was quite a tricky one. It was after some discussions or many discussions within our governing board, after recommendation from our scientific advisory board, that we decided to start with this knowledge. And I remember that we had a workshop in Oslo. I think it was in 2011. And at that time, we also got presented from one of the well-known instruments that we are using at a Nordic level, namely the Nordic Center of Excellence. And that was the model for this knowledge hub. We could have done a lot of other things, but I think we took a good decision. And afterwards, we have seen that this idea of creating a knowledge hub has also been taken up by other JPIs. But of course, we don't know how that will function, and that's the reason that I'm so happy to be here today, because in the coming days, because I think it's very important that I get feedback and impression of how we're working, what would be achieved by this knowledge hub. Because I have to say that our expectations, they're quite high. I think it's an ambitious project, but I think also the expectations are high, what should be achieved from this. And when I'm saying this, I'm of course saying what is the feeling from the governing board, but I also think that these expectations also count policymakers, farmers, extension services, everybody who are involved in this area, and everybody who needs better advice, because I think that's really what it is about. How can we use models, how can we use this project in having better advice for all those who are involved in this area. So therefore, what I think is needed for you to know, that is that we expect concrete results, something that we can build on. And coming back to the words from Martin Banz about the future, I think that's really what is important if we are going to discuss or to decide how to go ahead with Macsur, that we have this feeling that what you are doing here is something which we can use, we can build on, which will be needed also for the future. So I hope that we'll be able to discuss that during the coming days. I'll take this first. Here I'm trying to say a little bit about how I see FACE should develop in the coming years, and what I'm saying here was also what I said to the board when I elected as chair last year. First of all, climate change is high on the international agenda. That's for sure. And here I think that we have a very good project in Macsur. We just have got the fifth assessment report from the IPCC that's now going to be discussed, and I think that what we're doing here is very much following up in line with what we are discussing also there. I think also, if you look around, what is the general opinion is that climate change is something which is now generally accepted, and what we see is that these more permanent shifts in weather that also needs robust actions in Europe. Here again, I think we need also the results of what you're doing, because as we can see is that we have different ways of tackling these challenges. Of course, we also have different structures, we have different climate conditions, but we also have very different ideas and politics around Europe in dealing with these actions. So it's for sure that the issue on climate change is something which is there and needs better advice and need good decisions in the coming years. Then another thing which is so important also for me when we're talking about FACE, that is really the alignment among member states, alignment of strategies, policies, initiatives. I think that's something that we have to work on, and for me, such an alignment also needs commitments. So that's something that we are working within FACE, with the governing board. But to do this, I think that we need all of you. We need yes, a good view on this, how to do it, and without any commitment from member states, I don't think that we will have the real alignment of what we're doing here. It's also about money. Everything is often about money, and if we are going to continue with our activities, we also need that these issues that we are dealing with within FACE have a high priority, have a good funding. If not, then we will not be able to do what we wish to do. Then I think also it's important to stress that the bioeconomy is also setting a new agenda within Europe. We have had the strategy, the European strategy, some years ago. That's now going to be implemented. We have made this very big public and private partnership for the bio-based industries, which will start this year. They will announce launched their work program this summer for 2014, and they will really start in 2015. It's a quite big initiative. We are talking about 1 billion euros from the Commission, from the Horizon 2020 budget, and that is added with nearly 3 billion euros from the industry themselves. So it's quite a big initiative, and if we succeed there, I think you will see a lot of things happening within the bioeconomy. The reason that I'm saying that it's so important is that we are all dealing with the biomass, and when we're talking about food security, I think that we need also good advice how to deal with this. How do we see these potential conflicts between food and feed? How do we deal with into a bioeconomy? So therefore, for me, what we're doing in FACE is very important, and what you could come also with within Macsur from working with models, I think also could be very, very important for having good advice how to go ahead with the bioeconomy. Another thing which is also important, that is how to make the knowledge management. I think today we have a lot of knowledge. I'm not sure that we are using it in the. So how really to get the most out of what we have done in the last years. How to use results from our framework programs, from our national programs. How to also set up this system of the European Innovation Partnerships, and using what is in the SCAR, the Standing Committee on Agriculture Research. I think that's important, and also here I think Macsur has something to deliver in this area. Working closely with European and international initiatives, I think that's a smart way of working. And I said it in the beginning, we decided from the very beginning that we should not start on issues where we could see that others were making a good work. So therefore, we decided from the very beginning to have a good close connection with relevant international initiatives, but also with the European initiatives like the Aeronets, JPIs, the new KICS, other initiatives. I also mentioned here infrastructures, because I think that's also something which is important, and also for you that the infrastructures are also in the list of instruments or initiatives that we are looking into from FACE. And I think, especially working with models, you also need some field practical experiences. So therefore, combining models and also what is going on at the infrastructure experimental area, I think that's also important. My last slide, or one of the last one, would be about the communication. I think that's really important that we able to communicate what to do and what we are doing in this area. I mentioned here some of the big events that will take place here this year or next year, and my first was Macsur here in Sardinia. We have the FAO conference in May also this year. We have the big bioeconomy stakeholder conference also in Italy. It seems that many things are going to happen in Italy this year. Next year, Expo 2015, that will also be in Italy. So it seems that Italy is really going to be in the center of what is going to happen here. Expo 2015 could be interesting because we are discussing at the moment with the Commission what should be the headlines and what they want to do is really to also to expose what the Europe is able to do within food security and agriculture. And then lastly, we have the Climate Smart Agriculture Conference in OPA next year. My conclusion is that, seen from my point of view, Macsur is a flagship within flagship. I think it has a special role because it was the first project we started with. It was a new initiative. For many people, it was something new to make such a knowledge of. But having said that, I think also what we need is really to have a good feedback. We need a success, and I think also that will be really the determining factor also when we are going to discuss what will be the future for Macsur. I know that you have requested an extension, and I discussed yesterday evening with Martin whether we should call it an extension or what we should call it, because in my point of view, I think really what we need is to have a good feedback now, what has been achieved, what will be achieved in the future, and what is really the reason behind such a new period of Macsur. And I hope that during the coming days I'll be more able to adjust that and to have the discussions with you. And as I said in the beginning, I'm very willing to answer questions in this area. So thank you.
Richard, get questions.
Thank you for the nice introduction and overview again into the complex structure of EU funding and initiatives. You mentioned several times and we see it in the last slide, you would like to see Macsur becoming a success, and you also said we want to see results. Now, I guess we need a bit more clarity on what type of results. So we are also quite a diverse group. We have scientists that see it as a great result, they publish a paper in Science or Nature. We have other scientists that work more closely with stakeholders. For them, a good result is that the stakeholders are satisfied with the outputs of their work. Could you be a bit more specific on that?
Yes, I know that changeable results is a difficult area when we're working with models. For me, I think one thing which would be important that is really that we get the good international European evaluation on what we're doing. You're not working with models alone. You know that there are many groups around the world working with models. But I think what we need is really that the big organizations dealing with these issues, like the FAO, the European Commission, also take into account what we are doing here, and of course also member states start using the results from the Macsur. So I think that's something which should be taken on board. And then I think also that we need also perhaps to have some more concrete results from you. How do you expect things should happen around in Europe? You have been talking very much about this scaling up of Macsur, but when can we expect to see some of these results? And can we also have a discussion of these things? In this area, I think that it is very important that we not only discuss this in such a forum as we are here today, but that you also at the national level take up these discussions to see how you can approach your national stakeholders, decision makers, and have discussions there. So therefore, in getting this success, I really think that everybody has to do their own work and to start discussions at their home countries. But a general acceptance, a general use of what we are doing here, I think that's very important. At a European level, I mentioned also this to Martin yesterday. We are talking about making foresights, and we are now have decided to start a new SCAR foresight process. For me, it would also be a natural thing to see how we also could perhaps link what we're doing here in Macsur to the coming SCAR foresight. I know that to make a foresight is another thing than to work with a model, and normally, especially if you're talking about economic models, they are not very good in going into the very far future. But I think the subject that we are dealing with here is so important that for me it should also have a role to play in the coming SCAR foresight. So that could also be a result. But to come there, I really think that there is a need for having acceptance on what we are doing here.
Perhaps I can just follow that up by highlighting what seems to me to be a slight tension between what you say as the original goal of setting up the Macsur consortium and what you've just described as results, and I'm still not entirely clear what you mean by results. And the tension that I see is that we were set up as a network, something different from a framework type project which is designed to give specific results. And yet what you're talking about now is almost the result being somewhat more like the kinds of things that you would expect to be coming out of the framework, rather than things that would be things in terms of networking and critical mass, which implies a much longer term project than perhaps 3 years. So I'd be interested in your comments about the nature of that potential.
When I'm talking about results, that's perhaps a little bit, yes, it's put on to say that in a very clear manner, but I know that the idea was really to create a critical mass to force researchers in Europe to work better together in this area. But having said that, I think if we are going to continue with Macsur, we need something which we will be able to also to use in our decisions. And I know that we are just saying that we want to continue. We cannot really explain what has been achieved. Besides that, having a good network, and in the very far future we might come up with a better model. I'm not sure that would be enough. The situation is that the way that an initiative like Macsur has been financed, it was financed in very different ways. Some countries, like Denmark, for example, came in with new money from our research council. Here, talking only about the Danish situation, we have a very clear rule. We will not be able to extend a project with more money. That's our basic rule. We will be able to give you some more years if you have not succeeded in what you plan to do in your work plan or work program. But to give you more money, that's not a possibility looking from a Danish point of view. So therefore, if we're going to put this into a new phase, we need something more. We need something which can be explained that is it's a new project where we are building on what has been achieved there. In other countries, the financing of Macsur was different. Many countries came in with in-kind financing. Some had some restrictions on certain types of expenditures. I know that some research groups are lacking money for traveling, etc. So it was really a mixture of different funding. So therefore, really to have the best basis for a new decision, we need something for you. So that's the reason that I'm asking here for you really, what do we do? And as you probably also know, we have decided also to make our own evaluation of Macsur. And therefore, we need feedback from you how to evaluate really what has been achieved in the most tangible way that we can do it. I know that what we're dealing with here is not so tangible that it is perhaps in other areas, but I think that we need something which we can use for our decision. So that's the reason that I'm also pressing you a little bit. What do you think? What can we tell our funders that has been achieved in this project?
I have three questions in the audience, and I will now combine the microphone. I will ask all three questions together, and then we have a combined answer, and then we move on with the next presentation, because otherwise we're running out of time really. But I think this discussion is the starting point of the discussion, and we will continue over the next day. But I think it was quite important to have this discussion and this talk now and this interaction now.
Okay. Thank you very much for your very clear presentation about the budget GPI. But I also want to come back to the point that Frank made. What kind of results? Actually, we have a lot of results, and I would like to invite you to just here after come to the COP-M session. We have scientific results in very high-ranking journals, and we would not have them if the methods are not innovative and new. And at the same time, we have also results in terms of stakeholder interaction. But a little bit, we are now thinking what way should we go, because doing both has gone far beyond our resources. Doing capacity building exercises, being scientific excellent, having the stakeholder interaction in the regional pilot. We have done much more than the resources would allow to. So now we need some guidance.
If my understanding is correct, but please correct me if I'm not correct. So Macsur was originally conceived as a pilot project in the frame of GPI factor. But after Macsur, other projects have been produced, other consorts have been created with different rules and so on. But in this case, in these new cases, many partners are from outside Europe, and some projects are under non-European institutional leadership. So my question is, what's about this European strategy in terms of research around climate change impacts, security, and so on, when institutions from outside Europe are taking the leadership of GPI future projects?
Thank you very much for the interesting introduction. On purpose, I think the proposal 2 years ago was relatively open, because the consortium was starting, and then when we are now almost 2 years into the project, I think we are pretty comfortable on the science. I think we make a start on interacting with farmer communities, and that might be quite a challenge for the coming 3 years. And then I think in addition we need the policy interaction. That message was very clear. But at the end, I think these three elements need to be part of our second phase initiative. And here I think hopefully the governing board will accept that our approach to what we deliver is going to be quite diverse. Because I think we will present showcases where we really go into integrated assessment in various regions. And some groups will only, will still go into further improvements in the modeling. Some groups will only go into comparing models and initiate improvements. And all three elements will be certain steps in approaches where countries are able to improve their modeling capacity. And all three elements are needed to make Macsur visible. And essentially, what I really got from your message, that we need to clarify our mind that what we are going to deliver in terms of data, tools, and models.
Just very briefly, yesterday Alberto Masci said that in conferences like these, researchers tend to speak to other researchers more than to policymakers. So what I think is that we need more spaces for interaction with you and with other policymakers. And we need a pathway for that, a special pathway for that. We have a work package in each team of Macsur, which is dealing with regional pilot. And these are spaces for learning, because we also need to know which kind of knowledge you need, which kind of expectations you have to bring what you can offer in this special condition. So I wonder if you are thinking of a new process, new climate, we need a new process of interaction between policymakers and researchers.
So this is a full set of questions and remarks, and I would be very happy if you could give us a short.
I try to do it very short, and then we can come back, because as I said, I'll be here for the coming days, and the reason for that is really that I would like to have the opportunity to discuss these issues with you. So it's not only a presentation, but it's also to have a very better understanding on what you are doing. Very briefly, yes, I'm very happy to hear that you are working so well, and that you are perhaps also getting more out of what was our original plan. So what I think is really that I need to have a better understanding of what has been achieved, and what we hope we can use what you're doing here in Macsur, also at a political level. Coming back to your question about the other initiatives, it's for sure that FACE is about how to deal with the situation in Europe, how to cooperate at the European basis. But because the international agenda is so wide, Europe is not alone affected by climate change, which is not also always the result of what we're doing here in Europe. Your agriculture also have a very big climate footprint. We are a big exporter, but also a very big net importer of agriculture and food products. So therefore, I think also with that explains that we have an international responsibility. But if we invite people in from outside, they have to come in with money. We don't give them our money. So therefore, if they come in, it's because they have an interest and they have their money. So that's the basis how to cooperate with them. So yes, I think I'll conclude here and then come back later into the program.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your clear message. And you asked for an outline what we are planning for in a follow-up or a next phase of Macsur. And this is exactly the right time to show you a little bit of our ideas, which will be presented by Martin. And it's maybe we sit down here because the monitor is switched off, so we always have to turn around.
Thank you. That is indeed the intention of my presentation, to present to you and to the governing board what our initial plans are for a second phase of Macsur. What we mean by that is we will have achieved hopefully our goals by the end of May 2015. We would like to continue with the Macsur 2 or second phase. And in my presentation, I'm calling that an extension, but it's actually a follow-up. Sort of new, well, what we expect is new funding, and that's what the description is for. And from the project steering committee, we have been asked for input to the Pacsur stakeholder advisory, the scientific advisory board, the governing board. So we've set up some rough plan of what we might be doing in the second, in that follow-up phase. But we really want to consult all of you, all members, how this is going to look like. Nonetheless, we want to show you the outline, what we have presented so far. This is open to discussion, but this is the starting point. So, you know, JPI is a little bit specific and has its own rules. And from the beginning, we knew the duration of the knowledge hub will be 3 years for a first phase with the perspective of a 2-year extension. So that it's already in the call, subject to successful review and budget availability. So this 2-year follow-up phase would be June 2015 to May 2017. And it works like this, that the Pacsur governing board would recommend an extension of funding to the national funding agency. So you would again have to write an application to the national funding boards for the specific tasks that you are involved in. And like Niels mentioned already, each of the countries have their own rules again, as in the first phase. And thinking about how this would work time-wise, if we want to start in June 2015, going backwards, how would we achieve being there in time? We would probably, if we start from the bottom pointer, we would start with the discussions now, and the governing board indicated that they would decide on a general recommendation in June this year. We would then hopefully ask the governing board to indicate what the amount of money we might expect on the whole, so we can adjust our plans to the actual funding. It would probably, during summer break, about 4 months. So we have an overall work plan, hopefully, by November 2014 this year. That gives you time, about a month, to prepare national applications. From past experience of the first phase, they need about, overall, in all countries, about 3 months for evaluation. And by then, you probably know what you actually get in money, and that gives us time to reconsider our plans and maybe adjust that. So then we can start for full contracts in June 2015. So what do we think will be the overall mission of the extension phase, the follow-up phase? So we will have, by the end of May 2015, a good set of tools to use in the regional pilot studies. Now, the follow-up phase will be the phase to apply them to other areas to show how good they are, and, if possible, to improve them. So we will have new state-of-the-art, and because we are a European consortium, they should, in some way, reflect European-wide activities. And of course, they should be cross-cutting. This was also one of the original and main purpose of Macsur, to be integrative across CropM, LICAM, and TradeM. And we want to show clearly the benefits to farmers and policymakers. And to achieve that, this is sort of probably seen that before, that it's our original graph, how Macsur is set up. We've got the 3 themes, methodological case studies, regional pilot studies. And we want to change this a little bit in the follow-up version and emphasize the cross-cutting activities, the integrated studies, and the European dimension. So some of the proposed cross-cutting activities, and XC will turn up more frequently now, it's for cross-cutting. We want to have an evolution and upscaling in the transfer of knowledge gained in regional case studies. We want to have, or we suggest to have an assessment of additional scenarios of socioeconomic and climatic trends. And we want to further develop an interdisciplinary scientific community. One way this might be achieved is to actually have coordinators for work packages coming from 2 or 3 themes, so that the themes are actually always informed of what's going on. So you don't have a detour around the hub, but have even more direct interaction. Mentioned that apply experiences to other case studies. We want to show how it works, so it may be used across Europe and maybe even outside Europe. We want to go to the European dimension and continue capacity building in integrated modeling, as we have done already in some courses at universities that have been well attended. We want to use more scenarios. We suggest there may be room, given appropriate funding, to look at the climate change effects on feed quality and feed utilization, and then effects on the economy. We might want to look at greenhouse gas emissions from livestock and consider the trade-offs between mitigation and meat consumption, changes in preferences of meat consumption of humans. It's been some while since I've looked at this presentation. So what did I want to say on the slide? This is a hub event, and part of the discussion at the end will be more concentrated on the cross-cutting activities. Today is a theme day. You will split up into different themes, and of course you will discuss what you might do in the themes in the follow-up phase. But we also want to consider what the themes can contribute to the cross-cutting activities. And this would be the methods that you already developed in the first phase until 2015. And for crop metals, a contribution could be extending the scaling methods up to the European and maybe global scales. For the life theme, this could be the intensification of looking at feed quality and animal health modeling of climate change. And for the trade M, this could be economic models, doing the whole range from farm to the global level, capable of reflecting climate change. So today, this is the theme day, but we also want to consider, well, want you to consider what can you contribute to the cross-cutting activities in the follow-up phase. What knowledge can you contribute? Is there something essential missing that we haven't mentioned so far? And what resources are actually required? Manpower, women power, money, funding, knowledge, stakeholder interaction. What do we need to make this a success? And I ask the themes to select rapporteurs who can report back on your results tomorrow morning. And we will discuss overall the plans for the discussion, for the extension phase, for the follow-up phase, after the parallel workshops tomorrow in session E35 at 12:15, if we stay on schedule. Yes, that's the end of my presentation.
any comments and questions? I mean, there is a clear mission to you, or a statement to you that we need your input. Also, that was part of the work plan for today at theme level to provide us hints, comments, and information in terms of work you plan within the theme for the second phase, but also how to contribute to the cross-cutting activities we plan across themes. So it's all about the storytelling on leaving the silos. I don't see any direct comments now. I would like to move to Mike's presentation and may ask him to be efficient as possible. Sorry for being a bit too late.
Okay, good morning. It's my job to try and wake you all up now. I'm going to talk about something completely different now. This is about a project that is outside of Macsur. It was funded by Climate Change, Agriculture and Food Security Programme, which is part of the sessiom network, and it has the title AgriMod, the Agricultural Modelling Knowledge Hub website. I was given a contract a few years ago to develop a web-based knowledge hub, and what you're going to see is the state we're at the moment, and please bear in mind it's still under development. Okay, you might ask yourself, why on earth do you need another website? There's plenty of information available on the web, but probably if you have a search through on the internet, what you'll find is there's not really one that actually tries to tie together all of the different work that we're doing on agricultural modelling across the different research teams. So the aim of this project was to try and create something which can serve as the basis to hopefully unite us across our different research areas and to facilitate access to the sort of information that we need to help with our modelling work, but most importantly to try and build capacity, especially in developing countries, for people to come into modelling for the first time. Part of this is off the back of the AgriMed project and also Macsur, and that what we're seeing is a very rapid development in collaboration. You only have to look around the room to see that we're sort of gathered together with a fairly common interest. And what we're hoping to do with this website is to try and facilitate ease of access to new information to help with our work. Just to draw attention to the last point, that what we aim to do with this sort of platform based on the web is just to provide a service, and ultimately it will be you who ends up populating it with the sort of information that we'd like to see on there. It's for the community and ultimately will be built by the community as well. The rationale, well, we've already talked about the needs of food security, but particularly in developing countries, there's a need for people to be able to access information about modelling and build their own capacity, especially under the impacts of climate change. And also we're seeing, as we see here within Macsur, the increasing need for integration across research disciplines. So hopefully we can start to learn each other's specific languages, so if we can speak the same language, hopefully we can address problems together. And also we need a sort of a lasting legacy so that in 10, 20 years' time, we will be able to refer back to information that's been generated, data that's been generated, results that have been produced much more easily. Because if we currently keep relying on the system of just using peer-reviewed journals, it's very difficult for people outside of academia to access and understand it. So how is AgriMod going to work? It's a fairly normal website. You'll be able to register, enter your details, and And there are three key aspects to the site. There will be a means of finding information. So if, for example, you're not familiar with agricultural modelling, you'll be able to come in, hopefully understand what it's about, find out the sort of things that we do, and then start to look for any specific information. So there'll be search tools, maps, inventories, etc. We also have some taxonomy terms that we've introduced with the purpose that hopefully these may become accepted by consensus across the research disciplines again, so that we're hoping to end up speaking the same language. So it's a means of providing information. Most importantly, it will be an opportunity for you to upload information about your models, where you've applied them, the case studies, information about the data that you've used from it, and obviously, most importantly, what you've learned from it and what the meanings of your results are. Again, I'm going to emphasise this point. We've built it for the community, so you, the community, it's your responsibility now to actually upload information. It will be translatable into every language except for the taxonomy terms, because those are the ones that will be in English, and we'll have to keep those constant. I'd say it's still at the technical stage. We're still developing it. There's a couple of issues to resolve. It will be linked with Macsur through JSON. It will also be linked through to the AgMed project, and we're trying to make links with the IT team so that we can utilize some of their resources as well, things like parameter translation tools and things that they're working on. Okay, when I finally do come to actually launch this, hopefully fairly soon, it will be circulated around Macsur and around AgMed and other organisations and listservs, so it will be going viral, going global fairly soon. Okay, this is where it gets very risky, because I'm actually going to now try and show it to you. Alright. Okay. Bear with me 2 seconds. Okay, hopefully, if this thing's working, I'll just search Agrimark. It's working. Doesn't appear to be working. This was always going to be risky. No. Seems to have frozen up. No, it doesn't seem to be behaving itself.
Okay, we can. No, we can.
Okay, nothing like a bit of excitement early in the morning to keep us awake. Okay, the first thing you'll notice is it's coming up with some things in Italian. Note to self, sort out translations. Okay, you'll come through to an entry site, and at the bottom there's a enter content. You will be able to register and become a content editor. You'll be able to load up information yourself. You can create a new account. Fairly basic sort of details, nothing too clever, just some basic contact things, and a capture security thing at the end to keep your information safe. And usual caveats, we won't be selling your addresses on to any multinationals to earn extra money. Right, I'm just going to have to log on myself. Okay, I've just been asked to go even quicker than usual. Right, I'm just going to show you a couple of very simple points to try and get the message, and then what I'll try and do, if anybody's got particular questions on things, I'll try and get hold of a laptop and we can go through it in more detail. We have a sort of list of models. If you go into the site, you'll be able to load up information about your own models, and you can create details. I'm just going to go into one page. This is the COPSIS model, just to give you an idea of what we have at the moment. A fairly basic description of models, of the model. What I want to be able to do is develop this so we can look at technical details within the models, so we can then actually do proper sort of comparisons between the models as well. There's all sorts of additional information about things that the models actually link to, other areas of interest, case studies, and we can list them by different types of case studies. So if you're looking at a particular research question, we can organise it along those sort of lines. We have one of the things that sort of always comes up when people are starting up new projects is able to access information about the availability of data. The site won't hold data directly, but what it will do is provide links to data resources, slightly embarrassed one here. Scotland's National Soil Archive, that will take you through to a website where you can access the data for Scotland soil. What you find on your left-hand side of the things are issues to do with modelling and a whole range of other things. So you can treat this as a wiki site. So, for example, we talked yesterday about model uncertainty. The last thing I'd like to sort of point out on this side is that as content editors, you can go in, and this is very simple text editing. It's not like Wikipedia where you've got to learn a whole new way of writing. It is simply, you can go in and write. So if you've got an idea about uncertainty in modelling, you can write into it. 2 seconds. There's a second part to this. This is being able to access information. The other one is for you to be able to create content. So, for example, if you want to create content about a model, so if, for example, you want to write details about a model, you can do so. There's a text editor for you to write information about your model and places to place it in where the model has either been developed or where it's been applied, and there's a whole set of vocabularies, part of the taxonomy terms that go with it. So anyway, I'm very much aware that we're pressed for time, so I'll call it there. If you've got any more questions about it, please come and see me and I can take you through it in more details. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Half an hour too late, but I think we had an important session this morning. This is the only plenary we have today because now we split up in different groups. But I would like to give you couple of announcements. One is about the question, where do we put the speed session we have moved yesterday, or we skipped yesterday? We would like to have the speed session here in this room, but on the Thursday morning at 11:30, where we skipped the poster session, the third poster session, and we'll have the speed session instead of the third poster session here as a plenary in this room. So please keep that in mind, planning for Thursday. Then we'll also move the meeting of this project steering committee from this evening to our lunch break today, and we will use the room Conciliare, just above this room, and we have a meeting from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock or to 15 when go back afterwards and go back to each room. So that was the announcements of today. Again, thank you very much for the 3 presentations we had. Thanks, Mike. Thanks for the presentation, Martin. Also, thank you very much. I wish you a fruitful and successful discussion of this talk within and the planning of the work within the themes. Give us feedback, plan for the second phase, but also do your homework you have to do at theme level. And we meet again tomorrow morning here in this room at 8:45. What's that? It's 8:45. It's also so. Thank you very much, and have a good day.
Okay, we will continue state-debated cocktail session here, and I asked the speakers to upload their talks very quickly. We have 5 talks this morning. The first one is Christoph Müller with a talk on response to the economist wish list from the co-funding point of view. And thereafter, we have a presentation by Jürgen Olesen. A third presentation will be by Lutz Müller. The fourth one will be by Holger Hoffmann. And the last one will be by
Scusa, posso usare le quelle? Certo.